So, I think that I don't know about you, but I get asked, it's not as much anymore now that it's been, what has it been? 18 years
Yeah.
since the name change. But I still get asked, and I did, it was like a consistent drumbeat for a long, long, long time. Why did we change the name? Uh, and so on. And maybe I'll kind of frame that up.
Yeah.
And then we can, so back in the day, the mid 90s, the company was called Beaners Gourmet Coffee. And when you created that name, and when I became an employee, I had no idea that that was a derogatory term for Mexican Americans, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously we learned that and it was pointed out to us regularly, and so many people were like, oh my gosh, the association with the coffee bean, it's like so clear, and like there's no way that people could be, and it's like, I remember we talked about it for a number of years before we made the decision.
Yeah.
um but it was, why would you ever want to have a name that could be potentially offensive to anyone?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I remember we just again, it was not a quick decision. I mean,
No.
and we did end up deciding to change the name.
Yeah.
And I've, I've got I've got a lot of good memories around that. A lot of fun memories.
Yeah.
Meaning, it was really a very high pressure moment. You think about changing the name of your retail store. Like
Yeah.
uh that's a big transition we were considering. So
Totally.
I guess I just turn over to you, and maybe you
Yeah.
can riff on some of your memories, and I can probably add some color, and but let's have the name change conversation.
Conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the thing I wanted to remind you is when you joined the company, technically it was called Beaner's Cappuccino.
Mm,
And then
that's
we
right.
changed that to Gourmet Coffee. And
True.
the reason you had to throw gourmet in there, which that word has now in the industry been replaced by the word specialty. But the reason you had to throw gourmet is in those days, specialty coffee was called gourmet coffee. And the only way you could distinguish yourself was including that word. But by the time we did the name change, it was Beaner's Coffee to BIGGBY Coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one thing. I The other thing I want to remind you of is we were delusional for a while because we were like, yeah, it's uh it's a derogatory name towards a Mexican American, but I'm pretty sure we could change people's opinion on that,
Yeah. Right.
you know?
Right. Right.
And that was a swimming uphill kind of idea right
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. But one real important dynamic in this story that I think adds context
Yeah.
is we had a third partner at that point.
Yeah.
And Mary was not, for all of her talent and
Yeah.
commitment, and the effort and energy she brought. Mary wasn't great with change.
No. No.
And that was sort of her superpower in
Yeah.
many ways,
Yeah.
right? So I remember there were many so, emotional, even tear-filled conversations
Yeah.
around changing the name.
And I remember where we were when we did it or when we decided to do it because Mary and I used to live on Turner Street in Lansing
Yeah,
in one of those, and we were in that
in those
place, and
condos.
we were doing the SWOT analysis and all that bullshit that you do in business. But it had been like the umpteenth annual meeting that we had where we were talking about a name change or not a name change. And I know you and I agree on this today, but this was, still sort of the early-ish days. When you keep having to talk about something so much, that's the doorbell on. I think you're
Yeah,
supposed to change it, right? But
that's the flag that goes
yeah,
up, right? Yep,
yeah,
yep,
and
yep.
we would go back and forth and say why and why not and so on and so forth. But um, in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end, the public sort of facing reason why we did it, which was true, it was because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
Um, but um, you know, we did it because it just, in particular on the internet at that moment in time, people talk about location, location, location for a retail location, but the internet was emerging at that time, right? And Google was becoming popular and so on. And when you Googled beaners, what you got was like 100 sites dedicated to the defamation of Mexican Americans and Beaner's coffee. And like the real estate
Yeah.
on that was horrible.
Well, yeah, and there was, I mean, there was even, I remember there was some porn sites associated with
Yeah,
it. Remember?
right, right,
And one of the
right.
worst moments of my career is I was talking in front of a class, and I mistyped the website,
Yeah,
pulled it up on the screen, and it was a porn site. You know, I mean, that was horrendous, you know. But your
yeah,
point, and then the other thing too was it was occupying a fair amount of space,
yeah,
in conversations with people, and everybody would, and and also we're a franchise company,
yeah,
and there's sort of the practical component of that, which was, here people are investing their life savings in a business, and they're obviously bringing that up to us,
yeah,
right? So it's the right thing to do, but there was also this very practical issue of, boy, I mean, selling franchises is hard enough, and then you got to
yeah,
overcome this thing with your name, and it was just, oh goodness
yeah,
gracious, so, but I'll never forget. We'll let the firm remain nameless, but
yeah,
we hired the PR firm to help us with the name change and what we should name it. Remember? And they went through the whole thing, and I'll never forget. It doesn't sound like a lot of money today. That moment, it was an absolute potload of
fortune.
money, right? I
Yeah,
think it was like
yeah,
$37,000. And they came to us with all those names, remember? And
yeah,
and we're going through them, and we just not they and the one we settled on
yeah.
was, I mean, well, first of all, you and I had an absolute field day with each other over that,
No, for
right?
sure.
You made fun of me like I was, do you want to disclose the name that we had chosen, but then walked away from?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I mean, but I also, uh, you know, the travesty was we weren't going to make the same mistake twice, like choose the wrong name. So we hired a professional firm to do
Right,
it,
right,
and it was a total waste, not a total waste of money, but the names they came up with, one was there were three. I can only remember two. One was called BIGGBY,
yeah,
and I'm like, I remember when they told us that, I'm like, are you kidding me? Now there were some restrictions, like we wanted to keep our logo, which was a
right,
B,
right,
and so they had to have something that started with a B, and then the other restriction basically was that the industry had been around a while now. So, any like cute name that might be associated with the industry, like baristas or, whatever, was taken. And then the last thing is it had to be available from
right,
an IP or from a
right, yeah,
URL perspective,
right,
and an IP perspective.
right.
So there were a lot of gloves on them, but Bickabeen, I'm like, well, what the heck does that mean? You know?
Well,
And
then
they
there
were
was,
like, well, it's Arabica plus the word bean. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, it's not.
yeah, and then another one was Boulder,
Oh yeah.
and it was like, well, Boulder, I mean, that's a really famous town in Colorado. Like, why the heck would we choose Boulder in Michigan?
Yeah.
Remember? But the one that we opted in. Well, by the way, too, though, to rewind,
Yeah.
you and I early in the process presented BIGGBY to them,
Big B. Yeah.
because we were using that internally for our distribution company.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, 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 no.
Ridiculous.
It was down market, all this,
Yeah.
and it was like, well, you hire the professionals, you should listen to them, right? And we did, and so little drum roll. What was the name? Here we go. What was the name that we settled on with them?
Boku.
Boku coffee with a little umlaut on it, right? Remember a little umlaut on it. Yeah. And
BOKU.
yeah,
Yeah.
Boku. And uh where I grew up,
Yeah.
you didn't say Boku,
Uh-huh.
you said Buku.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
And you had a field day. I mean,
I
to the
did. I
point where
mean,
I like had to threaten to choke you out.
no, for sure. I mean, basically, I intimated that you were as backwater as somebody could be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
saying buku. I'm like,
yeah.
nobody says buku. You say
Well,
boku.
my grandmother
And
said Buku.
there's only about maybe two, if we're to stretch it, maybe three times that we were close to something like fisticuffs. And that was a big one. That was
Oh
a big
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. No, I really do think I threatened to like choke you.
Yeah,
But anyway, that was and then in the story, so we were sitting there and I remember where we were sitting. We were talking about really how we were going to do it, and we'll get
yeah,
into that here in a second. But it was just like we had this moment where it was like, "Fuck, I hate that name."
yeah,
Right? I think I don't
yeah,
know if you said it or I said
yeah,
somebody said it, right? It
yeah,
was like, and it was like, oh God, yeah.
yeah,
Like we both of us were like, oh, it just doesn't feel right. Like, and so we fired the firm,
yeah.
didn't get our 37 grand back,
No,
and we went with BIGGBY.
yeah. We went with Big B, and we didn't know how we were going to spell it, but that kind of pressure where it's like we got
Hmm.
to figure this out. I'm like, I think we got to spell it with two G's. It makes it more distinctive, and for
Makes it
whatever
bigger.
reason that worked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like if you see Big B today with one G, you're like, that's all jacked up. It
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
make any sense. But but when we said we're gonna Big B like that, yeah, yeah, it was a good moment. A lot of people identified with Big. We were doing outdoor advertising at that time, and even kids and stuff would be like, hey mom, look, the big B, that
Yeah,
kind of thing,
yeah,
because the logo worked,
yeah, yeah. It just worked. It just resonated. It just, I think probably because we've been using it.
Yeah,
I think back, like we've been saying Big B for so long because again, the little distribution company we
yeah,
have was called Big B,
yeah,
the Big B online supply
yeah,
store, right? And or no, that's what it is now. But it was
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
So we've been using it, and so it
yeah,
sounded okay to us,
absolutely.
And had they presented Big B to us, and we didn't know what it was, we probably would have been like, "Wow," you know.
Yeah,
But and then it became okay. Well, how the heck are we going to do this? And a lot of options. And I remember discussing them. In the contract, it read that the franchise owner, if we changed the intellectual property, they were responsible for everything, changing out the
yeah,
signs, so they had to pay for the whole transition.
yeah,
And so, that's what legally we could do.
yeah,
But I think that what we both understood, and I remember talking about it, was that the key to the success of the name change was whether the franchise owner thought it was a good idea.
correct,
And if the customer walked into the store and the franchise owner was negative about it, then the customer is going to be negative about it,
correct.
right? And so we kept going through. It's like, well, we got to make sure the franchise owner is happy with this, thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah,
So the options were, obviously we could have made them pay for it,
yeah,
which we both knew that was a bad idea.
no, yeah,
Two, we could have lent them the money at some, reasonable interest rate over
yeah,
some spread of time or whatever. We could pay for some portion, they could pay for some portion, or we could just pay for it.
yeah,
And, I think it's one of the better decisions we've ever made.
no, for sure.
But it was crazy because we opted to pay for it.
And as a reminder, we had 60-ish stores
Hmm.
at that time,
Hmm.
and outdoor signage.
Yeah.
The cups and stuff you could change, and
Over
there
time,
was
yeah.
no real impact on that, and so on. A few letterheads, but it was the outdoor signage
It
that
was
was
the
going
big
to be
deal. Yeah.
the animal.
Yeah. 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 Well, and so, you know, fast forward to the franchise meeting,
Yeah,
and it was the
I love
worst
that.
kept. Yeah,
No, that the worst kept secret, but that was at the Kellogg Center. We're still pretty small,
yeah.
and a lot of antics happened at those franchise meetings in those days. But I remember you being on stage and presenting that. It was funny as all get out.
Oh, and that was the meeting that still lives in my heart today
Me too.
when you referenced Jim Wongbickler.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah, he
I
was such,
mispronounced his name. The guy
yeah.
that gets Boku right, technically, completely wiped out. And I said it at the top of my lungs.
Screamed it into
Yeah,
the microphone.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh, well, so I remember both of us being on stage, but this is a long time ago,
yeah,
and we were going through it, and we announced it, and it was going to be happening, and most people knew it was happening or whatever. There was going to be some announcement around the name or the name,
yeah,
and then we got into how we were going to do it,
yeah.
and then we announced that we were going to be paying for it
Oh,
all,
yeah.
and then it became the greatest idea ever.
Oh, they erupted. I mean,
Remember?
yeah, standing ovation.
Yeah. And I mean, you want to talk about crazy though, Bob. That was crazy because here we were, 60-ish units.
Yeah,
Um, we've estimated that at somewhere between 700,000 and $1 million, right?
right.
And holy shit, is that a lot of money?
Oh, I mean, for us at that time, we were just talking about we had to scrape up $37,000 to figure out a new name, and now we needed $1 million to change the signs.
And I remember that was a wow, we gotta lean on. I mean, Paramount stepped
Yeah,
up big for
they really
us,
did.
and
They really did.
and we got a little bank financing,
Yeah,
but we put it together. We got it
we
done.
did. Yeah, as we
And
do.
yep, and here now today, again, I'll just say I think it's one of the best decisions we've made. I mean, Big B is now our name. Like and you knew that was going to be the case, but
Yeah,
those first 6 to 12 months,
yeah.
a little unsettling. With
No,
18 years of hindsight, it looks like it went really smooth. But
yeah,
we never really had any pushback, is what
no.
I mean. We had some nut jobs that that would hit us up online and
Oh,
tell
sure.
us, oh, caving to
Well,
political correctness and all of that. But
well, one thing about that PC-ness uh, is, there were concepts that were forced to change their name. Yeah, like I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about Sambos and stuff like that.
yeah.
And it was a strong corollary between Sambos and Beaners, um, but nobody was pressuring us to do this,
No,
and it was voluntary, and I think we voluntarily changed the name because it was the right thing to do.
yeah,
The
yeah.
there was one um there was one really pretty cool thing that happened out of that too. So, here we have been, fighting and clawing to get to 60 units, and that felt like huge.
Oh, it was huge. It
It
is
was huge
huge.
in that
Yeah,
moment in time.
yeah,
But Jesus, if we couldn't get a freaking article out of anybody, right?
yeah,
And then we changed the name, and suddenly we're coast to coast
yeah.
getting newspaper articles when there used to be newspapers. And I still credit that with having, in some ways, put us on the map with a lot of people. But the particular story that I like is I've been going to the same barber, for 20 years or whatever, a real guy's guy kind of place. And they had known everything that I'd done, and accomplished and built this company, blah blah blah. And I might get one or two questions each time I go, but nothing serious. But I remember when we changed the name, one of the barbers was reading the newspaper and he's like, "Holy shit, you changed the name!" And then suddenly all the barbers were standing around me while I'm getting my hair cut, hearing the story about it. And
Yeah,
so for
yeah.
some reason, that did capture people's
Well,
imagination.
and I think because I don't know about you, but I've always been asked the question, like, you know, I mean, were you guys getting sued? Like, and it was always like, no,
Yeah,
like we weren't getting sued,
no,
and there was no outside pressure.
yeah,
We did get two national awards,
yeah,
around the name change and,
yeah,
sort of in the social sort of responsibility realm and so on. And that was cool. But here we are today, and it's God, it's a long time ago. I
It
mean,
is.
18 years is a long time. We changed the name 18 years
Yeah.
ago. If I'm getting my math right on that.
You know, you and I used to do a lot of public speaking, and you still do a lot of public speaking. I don't do as much, but you get to Q&A, and you could be talking
Every time,
about how
every time,
brilliant your business is, or the your core values. I mean, just really earth-shaking stuff. And damn it, if the top
every time.
question for the first 10 years were something about the name change.
It was,
And
yeah.
that's the thing, when you opened up here, you said we're getting that less now. But it might fall in the top 10 questions,
It's
but
still
in
there.
those
Yeah,
days, man, it was like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
people raising their hand, can't wait to ask that question,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Well, and I think that a couple of things from that. I mean, one, yeah, we did have a lot of really nice press, and
Yeah,
the beautiful thing about press is it lives on.
it does.
We could capture those articles, we could reproduce them, we could send them out in our franchising packet, and so
Yeah,
there was a lot of value in that to us.
yeah,
And the other thing is when we were talking to prospective franchisees, we could tell the story.
yeah,
And we could say, like, no, we ponied up.
yeah,
Like, we ponied up $1 million
yeah,
to do this. And we
yeah,
didn't charge the franchise owner anything.
yeah,
And it's like, that's a story to a prospective franchisee that really demonstrates our care for them and how much we
absolutely.
respect the investment they put into it. And
Yeah,
and and we still live that way today.
absolutely.
John Gilkey was telling me a story this morning about how he we were having a very similar conversation of this. I won't go into all that, but
Yeah,
he said that one of the times he realized how serious we were about this company and about
yeah.
growing it in a healthy way was he had devised a whole mechanism
Mm.
back in the day. I mean, probably close to 20 years ago. I don't know, where we could um, aggregate all of our credit card transactions
Mhm.
at the stores and then, take some juice off that,
Yeah,
right? And pocket that, right?
yeah,
And I said, this is a great idea,
yeah,
but the juice is going back to the franchise owner,
yeah,
right? So let's do it. We didn't end up doing it, but
yeah,
but let's do it, and then we'll just lower the cost of the franchise. And
yeah,
when I said that to him, he said he realized at that point, like, similar to the name change story,
yeah,
that there's just a ton of respect for the franchise owner, the
yeah,
investment they've made, being responsible for returning on that investment, making
yeah,
sure that investment is safe, and and so I think it's a cool story. So dramatic. It
yeah.
really was dramatic,
Very,
yeah,
very.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, it's an insight to character, and it is about doing the right thing and doing it the right way.
yeah,
And it was the first sort of public demonstration of that, and that continues on today. And I'm not saying that, geez, everything that we've done is has been done from a Superman slash Robin Hood kind of way.
you're
But
mixing your superheroes there,
yeah,
just so you know.
whatever. I'm trying to cover all demographics.
Yeah,
No, but you know, that's the way we operate. That's where we are
yeah,
as people. And
yeah,
and a company like ours is made up of the DNA of the founder group, and that lives on today.
yeah,
Through all the people that work at our home office, through all the ARs, through all the
yeah,
franchisees and their employees, and the customers. And I
yeah,
think that stuff is gold.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What else about the name change? Anything?
I think that's about it. Um, yeah, it was traumatic, but a long time ago.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I mean, it's remarkable to me that in a few months we're going to be 30 years old, and I just time passes, and that was 18 years ago,
yeah,
and it's incredible to me.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, so if we're marking time on this video, I think in this week's huddle, so we had 60 units then, and there's
Yeah,
422 now,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so that's it's never accelerating as fast as we might expect it to, but man, does it just continue to grow.
Yeah, it does. And it but I'll tell you, it's yeah, but when I talk about that with people, it's like, yeah, but it's been 30 years. You know, come on. Yeah,
Yeah,
we built over 400 stores, which I mean, is
yeah,
an impressive thing. I don't
yeah, right.
mean to mitigate that or diminish that, but it has been 30 years,
No, for sure.
and so, but I do believe that with every cell in my body, the next 30 years is going to be crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
So, but to put that like in context, a concept, let's say like Dunkin' Donuts, I mean, this started in the mid 50s for crying out loud.
yeah, I
You
know.
know, they should be at 10,000 units, but they're
Yeah,
not,
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
or Starbucks started in the 70s.
yeah,
Like this is pre-Howard Schultz, but it started in the 70s. It's a long time ago. Tim
yeah,
Horton, same
yeah.
same thing.
Give us another 20 years and see where
Yeah,
we're at.
correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Dominate the world, damn it.
yeah, yeah. All right, well, that's good. I think that's a wrap, huh?
Absolutely.